see you guys in the dark.
I'm going to warn everyone ahead of time. This might be a bit lengthy, as I have quite a bit to say, and well, a lot has happened over the last year when it comes to this girl. I'm going to start off by saying that I was with her on and off for almost 6 years. The on and off part should have been a good indication that I should have jumped ship a long time ago, but I constantly allowed her to burrow back into my life. There really should be a subreddit called "Shit My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Has Done," or something close to it. If there is, please let me know. I've had enough stories involving this girl that I could write a book. Hell, maybe write a TV series. Anyway, on with the stalking. I'll start by giving you some information about our relationship and what caused me to break up with, I'll call her Crazy, as that's exactly what she is. About 2 years ago, or so at least, Crazy started calling and texting me after we had been broken up for close to 6 months. At first, I just decided I was going to ignore her because I knew if I let her back in, things would just go to hell in a handbasket eventually. However, one night I had been drinking and got this lame-ass sentimental feeling and decided to answer one of her text messages. That was all it took. She started coming over, and eventually we ended up together again. We were together for close to 7 months before I finally got fed up with her bullshit and kicked her out of my apartment. It was physically abusive and a mental mindfuck. If I didn't let her use my car whenever she wanted, give her money when she claimed she needed it, or basically do whatever she asked, she would have a tantrum like a 3-year-old and cause more drama than any one person could endure. During our time together, she managed to get herself in some real trouble after she beat some dude over the head with a beer mug at a local bar we'd frequent. What really ended the relationship was when she started using meth and was bringing that shit into my house. I tried getting her help, but she turned it around on me as if I was trying to change her. So I gave up and told her mother she needed to get her daughter the hell out of my place before I called the cops and had her removed. I told her we were done, and I never wanted to hear from her again. At this point, I had given her multiple opportunities to change, but she refused and made it seem like I was the problem. Whatever, I was done. The problem was, she wasn't. The day I finally ended, it was the beginning of her tormenting. She started her attack by creating a Craigslist ad under the escort section, with a fake picture and my phone number as a contact. I received over 500 plus calls and text messages from random dudes looking to get laid. This lasted for about a week before things calmed down. If that wasn't enough, the same night while my phone is blowing up, I see a security guard from my apartment complex nosing around my car, shining his flashlight in the windows. I go outside and ask the guy, "Is there a problem, officer?" He replies, "I got a report that this car here is abandoned and needs to be removed." I'm just like, the fuck it does. That's my car, and I live in the apartment right over there. I ended up having to get my title and a valid driver's license to keep this douche from calling a towing company and having my things removed. Next day rolls around, still getting a massive amount of texts and calls through my whole workday, which was really pissing me off. I got home after work and sit down to try and relax when there is a knock at the door. I look out through the peephole and see some dude I've never met before standing outside. I don't answer. I wait for him to leave, and then look out my balcony and see this guy is on the phone standing right out front. I yell down to him, "Hey, can I help you?" He responds, "Is Crazy here?" I'm like, "No, that's my ex, and I kicked her out the other day. Maybe check her mom's house where she's staying." I end up talking to this guy further. It turns out that she set up a dinner date with him and gave the guy my address as the address to where she was staying. That night, another 3 guys showed up looking to have a dinner date with her. I had work the next day, and while I'm there, she starts sending me texts, pictures of the outside of my apartment with messages like, "It's quite breezy in the apartment with your patio door open, and I hope your dog finds his way back home. He got out." So, needless to say, this shit is stressing me out. I'm almost positive at the time it's bullshit, but there's always that chance that crazy actually broke into my apartment. I got home later to find my apartment the way I left it, but the pure mindfuck of it all is that what is close to giving me a fucking ulcer. The whole time I'm ignoring her, hoping this shit would come to an end. Nope, it only escalates even further. Once again, after work, I have a knock at my door while I'm watching TV. I check the peephole, and there's 2 police officers standing outside. I'm just thinking, now what the hell, as I open the door, and I am greeted by 2 relatively large gentlemen in uniform, with shitty looks on their faces. I'm just like, yes, can I help you? Are you, insert name here, asks one of the officers. Yes. Is there a problem? Replies, only if you'd consider touching a woman a problem. Can you provide your whereabouts for the last 2 hours? I was extremely worried, but I respond, well, I just got home from work like 45 minutes ago. What do you mean by that? Who told you that? This woman really stepped up her game, calling in a false police report and getting the cops to come questioning me about it. That's just fucking bold. The cop responds, I'm not at liberty to provide that information, but will need you to provide some proof that you weren't in the Galt area between the hours of 2 and 5 this afternoon. Now I'm actually starting to get pissed knowing that I'm 100% innocent of this alleged act, and so I kind of get an attitude which didn't really help my situation at the time. But I calmly respond, if you want to go to my place of work and verify that I was there until 4, that will prove I had nothing to do with this. And furthermore, the person accusing me of this crime, are you going to arrest them for filing a false report? What I heard next floored me. The cop says, I'm not so sure it's a false report. Your car is still warm, and you look guilty. No shit, my car is still warm. I just drove home from work less than an hour ago, Einstein. Some freaking awesome detective work, Chief. They left, but before doing so, told me not to leave my apartment, as they would be back if my story didn't check out. Well, they never came back, and I called the police station multiple times to get an update on what they figured out. And you know what they told me? No police report had been filed. There was no record of any police being dispatched to my address on the day in question. How the hell? I was seriously about to lose my shit. How can she continue to do this with no consequence? Mind you, I'm still getting texts and calls. Less than in the beginning, but they were still coming in. I think it was like a week or so, and things went quiet. Minus the calls and text, but even those weren't all that heavy anymore. I started to think that she was done messing with me, and I might be able to live in my normal life, drama-free. Fuck no. I stopped at my mailbox after work about a week or so after the whole situation, and received a letter from the post office that said I had changed my address, but if this was incorrect, to contact them to stop the mail forwarding. So I call these dudes and tell them I haven't moved nor have I filed a change of address form, so there's no reason to forward my mail elsewhere. They assure me that my mail will continue coming to my current address, and that I had nothing to worry about. Well, they were full of it, because I didn't get a piece of mail for 2 months after that day. It took 3 phone calls, visits to the local post office to get that thing rectified. Now, had it been me not getting my mail, I wouldn't have been that pissed off about it. But once my mail was forwarded to the address where Crazy was getting it, she used that as an opportunity to get all of my account information for my electric, gas, phone, cable, car, and banking information. I have extra security set up on my bank account, so that was safe. My car payments weren't going away, but she managed to shut off the cable, my electric, and my gas. I also got phone calls from my phone company stating that changes would be applied to my account if I hadn't called. I was angry. I ended up paying an extra $300 in fees to get my gas and electric bill put back into my name, mainly because my apartment complex ended up paying the balances on both accounts and charged me for that. This was getting all too much. I started calling the cops, and they just asked if I had gotten a restraining order. I explained that I had tried, but she continued to evade being served, and after a period of time, if the person isn't served, the restraining order is no good. The response was, "We can't help you." Wow, thank you. Can't help me, but you can follow up on a false police report? and then ignore that like it never happened? Gotta love the cops out here. However, I got a break. If you remember, she was arrested for smacking some dude over the head multiple times with a beer mug, right? Well, she had finally gotten convicted and was given 3 months in jail for it. 3 freaking months. Are you kidding me? There is no way in hell I could go out and beat some guy with a glass object all willy-nilly and not go away for at least a year, if not longer. But somehow she squeaked by with ease. Either way, that meant peace and quiet for at least that period of time. I was watching her status in jail online from time to make sure she was still locked up, when one day I checked and saw she had been released 2 days prior. In my head, I screamed "fuck" as loud as humanly possible, and started to get paranoid about this girl and what she might do next. Weeks went by and nothing. Finally, she's done, given up, or so I thought. A few weeks ago, it started with a text, a picture of a pregnancy test that showed positive. It came from a number I have never seen, so I wasn't sure who it was, but I had my suspicions. Figuring it was her, I texted back saying, "Ha ha ha ha, finally. Any ties to you I had are broken. Have fun with the poor schmuck who knocked your crazy ass up." I got a response, "You obviously don't know who this is," which was true and really got me thinking considering I had talked to a few other women since being with the ex. Either way, I ignored it and just hoped it would go away. Over the next week, after I kept getting texts, only that one picture, nothing else. Once again, kept ignoring until I got another text. This time it was a picture of a woman holding her stomach, showing that she was pregnant, minus the head. Immediately after that, another text saying, "I guess we know who the fertile one out of the two of us are now, don't we?" That there told me it was the ex, as we actually tried to have a kid, but never were able to. So I responded back, "Awesome. Have a good life with whatever schmuck you managed to get you to impregnate you." Thank fucking Christ it wasn't me. Now kindly, screw yourself. Replied back with stupid insults that are irrelevant to the story, and I just ignored it, figuring she'd done what she wanted, rubbed in the fact that I couldn't possibly be sterile, which to me, that is a win-win. I can't have kids, and now she's got other things to deal with that'll keep her from bothering me. A week or so went by, and it's last week Thursday. I'm the type of person that tends to do things at the last minute, and when it comes to waking up in the morning to go to work, I sleep as late as I can, so when I get to my car, I need to leave right away, or I could end up being late. So I'm headed to my car and notice something stuck to it. There are 3 magnets on my car with stupid slogans. I think one said something about being a cat lady or some dumb stuff. I really didn't pay attention as I peeled them off because I needed to get to work. What I did notice is the bitch superglued the fuckers to my car, so it wasn't easy getting them off. And I still have remnants of magnet on my car. That wasn't the worst of it, and to explain the second part, I must first tell a short story. I explained how crazy got into using meth. Well, one day when I allowed her to use my car, she went to meet her brother at his apartment. They got into an argument. He owed her some stuff. He didn't have the meth. She thought that he did. In turn, the brother wanted to leave. In an attempt to stop him, she used my car to barricade him in. And when she did, he got out and kicked in my driver's side window, and then got back into his truck and proceeded to run into my car until she moved out of the way. So, I didn't have a driver's side window for the longest time. He didn't have insurance, and is a freaking tweaker, so getting money for him to fix the window was pretty much impossible. I'm also lazy and do things at the last minute, so I never got it fixed. The weather in California allows me to drive around with a broken window and not worry about the interior of my car getting ruined. Anyway, back to last week Thursday. I now have magnets stuck to my car, and I'm about to get in when I see approximately 5 pounds of dog shit with open condoms just chilling on my driver's seat. You've got to be freaking kidding me, I think to myself as I start to look for something to quickly clean this up. Literally, out of my fucking car. There was a plastic bag on the ground, so I grabbed it, and thankfully, it was dry, so I was able to quickly get it off the seat. Sure, I still ended up sitting on some of it, but I didn't have the time to waste, as I was already late and needed to get to work. I got there and told my boss. Thankfully, he's a cool guy, and let me take the first half hour of work to clean it out completely. Needless to say, I have replaced the driver's side window on my car. Now I wait, wonder what the hell this girl has in store for me next. My guess? Something even more messed up. Now, I know I'm going to get two questions. The first, why haven't I changed my phone number? And the second, why haven't I moved? To answer the first, I have too many people that know my current number. I am not going to let this bitch win by inconveniencing myself and changing it. Second, I plan on moving, but don't have the greatest rental history, so breaking my lease wouldn't help that in any means. So I'm sticking it out and hoping Crazy just screws herself. This story is about my dad's ex-girlfriend. My dad has horrible luck with women. He is like a crazy magnet. Every woman he has ever dated, except his current girlfriend, has been abusive both mentally and physically. This list includes my mother. But this story is about his last girlfriend, Mary. She has gone from stalking not only him, but me, my husband, and our daughter, too. They met at a Christmas party and hit it off. He had just got out of another bad relationship with a different woman that he had been on and off with for 3 years. She was a classic narcissist type. Well, Mary seemed different. She claimed she was also just out of an abusive relationship. They went out for a few months, but she never let Dad over to her place. He didn't find it all that weird until he received a call from a man who said Mary was his wife and wanted to know how my dad knew her. At first, Dad thought the guy was her ex, still trying to control her. But things started to add up. He finally confronted Mary, and she gave him some sob story about how her ex was refusing to sign the papers, that they were separated. My dad did a bit of digging, and even talked to Mary's parents at one point. He found out that not only was Mary definitely still married, but she wasn't separated from her husband. As far as anyone in her life knew, she was happily married, and my dad was just a friend, if they knew about him at all. Needless to say, he broke up with her. She lost it, started showing up at his work, calling in the middle of the night, texting him 50+ times a day. All that good stuff, you know. My dad moved states twice and changed his number several times to try and get away from her, but she always found him. Love letters would arrive in the mail, or she would call and say she was coming to see him. Then she found my number, probably sometime after my dad moved in with me. She started texting me almost as much as him. Once I married my husband and had my daughter, she really went all out, sending me presents for her new granddaughter, always wanting updates and the like. I never replied, and either sent back unopened packages or donated items she had sent directly to me from shops. Everything finally came to a head when she arrived to my dad's doorstep while he was at work with a casserole for him. She gave it to his roommate and told him it was because she noticed my dad was losing weight. He told his roommate to toss it. He didn't want to risk poison, since he had just applied for a restraining order. That some night she may show up to my apartment while my husband worked the overnight shift. It was after 1 a.m. when she started knocking on my door. I was glad that I had sent my toddler to my aunt and my uncle's for the night when I saw it was her. She left banana bread on my doorstep that we threw out as soon as my husband got home. The next night, I again left my toddler with my aunt and uncle in case she came back. She did. I started getting texts from her as she pounded on my door. She wanted to see her grandbaby and have some girl time with me. They slowly devolved into demands for me to open up the door. I called the cops. While I was on the phone with dispatch, my neighbor came out ready to take her on. He told her cops were on the way since his wife was already calling them. She disappeared pretty quick into the park across the street. The cops didn't catch her, but my dad's restraining order did get granted. We have since moved across the state, but she still texts me from time to time, wanting to know how my dad is, or what my daughter is up to. I never answer, but I do save all of her texts just in case I have to get my own restraining order as well. My brother met his girlfriend a year ago when he was 17, and she was 16. For a little while, they seemed like they had a great relationship. My brother, Alan, and Jamie were always happy together, and Jamie made a real effort to know the rest of the family. However, I noticed something was off whenever my brother wanted to go out with his friends without Jamie, and she would have a complete meltdown, screaming about how he didn't love her and how much she does for him, etc. This happened all the time, so eventually he started spending more time with her to avoid conflict. She even got annoyed at my mother's funeral because he wasn't paying enough attention to her. Like, what the fuck? Our mom just passed. Chill out, dude. Things started to get worse with her accusing him of hitting her whenever he would try to deflect her from punching him in the face. My brother has some mild anxiety problems and guilt about our mother's death, since they weren't opened on the best of terms before she died. He uses Xanax or bars to try to self-medicate, which she knows, and often would pick fights with him to use his actions against him later on, or try to tell the school he was on something to get him in trouble when he didn't want to have anything to do with her. Eventually, Alan couldn't take it anymore and ended the relationship a few days ago. A quick note. Our glass back sliding door is pretty weak. If you yank at it hard enough, you can force it open despite it being locked, unless we put the key in. The other day, she showed up at 5 in the morning, banging on the door and demanding to be let in. My dad got after her, and she left. This morning, however, she broke in through the back door and got into bed with my brother, who slept through all of this. My dad found her and told her to leave, or he would call the cops. This afternoon, I heard my brother and his friend get back in from school. All was well until once again Jamie broke in through the back door, as she has taken the key this morning. Alan's friend stopped her from going into his room, and I told her to leave and not come back, or I was going to call the cops. After she had left, my dad came back with 3 new keys made for the back door. My brother showed us her claims of cutting herself, which we reversed imaged and found it immediately, along with the fact that she didn't have any cuts on her arms. It's gotten so bad that my brother doesn't want to go to school since she follows him around and tries to get him to talk to her. And when that doesn't happen, get him in trouble. Jamie, I hope you get out of our lives and get the help that you desperately need.
Okay, so this all happened about 3 years ago or so. I was around 17. I'm not going to dramatize anything, but let me go ahead and say that I think, personally, that this is a pretty bizarre story. There are some details about my actual relationship I'm going to leave out. I kind of want to answer this story/question, but I don't think I'll ever get one. I've been wanting to get some outside opinions on it, aside from my friends and family too, though, so here it goes. My ex Jane and I lived about an hour away from each other. We met at a park out of state and ended up living kind of close. We hit it off and dated a month after we met. Our entire relationship lasted a year, and she was my first girlfriend ever. From the very beginning of the relationship, she would discuss her best friend named Patrick. He was in his late 20s. She, as a reminder, was 17 and worked in a bookstore. He lived in her town, and she had known him since she was 13. From very early on, I thought the stories she would tell about him were kind of outlandish. She would talk about watching him get into bar fights with a guy that went by Hammer, how once they pretended to rob a gas station, but left money behind on the counter, and had to jump off a roof to escape security, in which Patrick broke his ankle. Another time, Patrick got a brand new Mustang that they wanted to crash into a lake, so they jumped out at the last second. She told me that one towards the end of our relationship, at which point I was completely skeptical of everything she said. You get the idea. The stories she told seemed clearly exaggerated or downright fake. Part of me thought she was trying to impress me for whatever reason. Here are some other important facts I don't exactly know where to put, so I'll lay them out there. Jane was an artist. She drew all the time in her journal. She rarely drew people as they actually were. She drew people as monsters or animals. For example, She always drew me as a giraffe. She was pretty good at it. Patrick's last name, according to her, was pronounced and spelled a certain way. Willington. Patrick Willington. Patrick's dad owned a successful company out of the state that Patrick would inherit. Jane had a much older brother who was in his late 20s as well, that had joined the military and moved to Korea. She only saw him every few years or so. Okay, now continuing. Jane would tell me that Patrick was very protective of her. She would tell me about him, and he would always be unsure of what he thought. She said he wanted to beat me up sometimes, and that he'd hurt me if I hurt her. If she told him about something silly I did, he'd think I was an idiot and call me stupid. He also thought I was gay. This is all, of course, second-hand information. Never once in the entire relationship do I think I spoke to him. I'd also like to remind everyone that this was my first relationship. I was very insecure, very confused, and there was more going on in it that complicated some things. I did not have the best relationship. The thing is, I really didn't have any reason not to believe her, you know. She had no reason to lie about any of this, but I was still very skeptical. Sometimes Jane would go to Patrick's house really late at night. She said she'd sleep on his couch, and that he would literally throw her out of the house in the morning. Sometimes she said she had to sneak out of her house to go to his. He lived within walking distance, apparently. One time, later in the relationship, Patrick invited her on an out-of-state trip back to his hometown. They were going to stay in a mountain cabin for a week. I was not happy about that. I was more upset when she said she wouldn't tell her parents, and that they'd leave on a bus in the morning. Now, at this point in the relationship, I was very unsure of what was going on with this Patrick person. But Jane said that if I told her parents about the trip, that she wouldn't be able to go, and that Patrick would hate me, and she'd be pissed. It was important to her because Patrick apparently would be forced to move away soon to work at his dad's company. And she said she'd never see him again, so she needed to go. Well, when the day came for her to leave, Patrick never showed up to get her or whatever. She was very upset, even though he'd be back in town one more time. On another tidbit, Jane's parents never once mentioned Patrick ever. She never brought him up around them either. The only time she mentioned Patrick to anyone else was to my dad once, after we broke up. She told my dad one of the outlandish stories I mentioned. My dad was flabbergasted. Basically, I had told him about all of this, but hearing it in person was crazy. Patrick was to have a birthday party once. I was invited. It was going to be at his house, starting at midnight. I said I couldn't go do that, but that I'd get him a present instead. I got him a toolkit. She said he'd like that, and I gave it to her for him. She said she brought it, and that he did in fact like it. She said the party lasted until about 6 a.m. Patrick sent me a text from her phone once, when she was with him. It was standard behavior for him. He said I was a pansy or something, and that he'd beat me up. That was early on. Now, here is where I think things were very interesting. Jane lived nearby an elementary school. She walked with me there, and said his house was close to it. So she leads me to the back of the school, where there is woodland. She brings me to the edge of the woods, and has me look in. I see this very old, wooden, tin house sort of structure. It has broken windows. It's filthy. It's falling apart. The path to it is covered by bushes and trees. She said that that was his house. Oh, and at this point, he had moved to work at the company out of state. I asked her if she was joking. She said no, that he wasn't a very tidy person, even when he lived there. I thought briefly that maybe the house was just weird looking on the outside, but actually good on the inside. But there's no way that it was. It was abandoned. Anyways, that same day, she asked if I wanted to go inside. It was hot, getting dark, No one knew exactly where we were, and I didn't want to get cut up by bushes or go in the sketchy house. So I said maybe another time. She insisted, saying that Patrick wanted us to check on things, but eventually she gave up. This was very close to the end of our relationship. I asked her a few more questions, like, "You went through those bushes and stuff every time you went to go see him?" She said yes, but they had overgrown since he left. I also asked how he drove out of his house, how anyone visited him otherwise, how he got mail. She eventually realized that maybe I didn't exactly believe her, and she got mad. I said I was sorry, and that it was just different to me. She insisted that it was true. I let it go. Well, we ended up breaking up shortly after, but I had a hard time coping with the breakup, and ended up speaking with her again later. She was on a bus with her class to go to some trip. Well, I lost connection with her and called back. A young man answered. I asked who it was. He said it was Patrick Willingson, not Willington. So I opened up with a question about his last name, and also why he had her phone. He said that was always his last name. He said he was on his office phone. I kept asking him questions about himself that only the real Patrick would know. I heard noises in the background. He would pause a minute before answering. I think she just handed the phone to a classmate and told him what to say. Frankly, that's the only real answer to that one. Well, he hung up, and I called her back. Jane answered and said that Patrick told her I somehow got connected to his phone, since he was in her recent contacts or something. Clearly BS, but I played along with it, and left it at that. Oh, and he wanted to beat me up, of course, badly for breaking her heart. Well, I kept speaking to her for a week or two, and we both finally got closure about the relationship. But as I was recounting this experience with a friend, I realized something. Probably just a creepy coincidence, but I had said Jane was an artist, and that she always drew people as other things. Well, I saw many drawings of Patrick. She always said he wore this dark coat and ripped pants or something. She, as usual, didn't draw him as a human. She drew him as a skeleton. Really creeped me out for whatever. I may be forgetting some other weird things that happened, but that's the main stuff. Now, to tie it all together, here are some stuff that I have done about it since. I tried using Google Earth to look at his house, since I remember exactly where she showed me. The trees are too thick to see in, and there is construction nearby, so it may not even be there anymore. I have not gone back in person since it is too far away, and also close to her house. I have Googled and researched it countless times, and anything I could remember. No usual results. She used to mention him on social media sometimes. A friend of mine, who had trouble grasping all of this, found her profile and saw him mentioned. Recently, too. I have a few theories about this. Patrick was sort of an imaginary friend character that she made up to fill a place of her much older brother who moved away, and she didn't see very often. Second, it was all BS that she made up for whatever reason, to impress me sometimes, to coerce me to other things. 3. It was part of a much greater disorder problem. 4. Patrick didn't exist in some way, shape, or form, but she highly, highly exaggerated him and rarely saw him, so she told me whatever she wanted about him. It may not be as creepy to all of you since you're on the outside of my social circle, but like I said, that's why I'm posting. But to me personally, I am bothered by this. Jane had a tendency to be very violent and say threatening things to me. Why did she make it all up? Why did she show me the house and say that it was his? What was in the house? Regardless if anyone lived there, did she ever actually go in like she said she did? Did she sleep there sometimes, or visit late at night like she said? If so, what in the world was she doing? Did someone really somehow live there? Why did she draw him as a skeleton? Why did she have strong feelings about me? Why did she change his last name? Why did she do the weird things with the phone and classmate? How many of her other loved ones know about this? What would have happened if I went in that house? etc. Some of this is probably heightened by my anxiety, but I do think it's a weird story. I plan on using it for a fictional story one day, and of course, changing some stuff for it. But anyways, thank you all for listening. There have been suggestions to go back to the house with friends and check it out. I mentioned in a comment that has been considered before, but there are some problems. The house was actually 2 stories high, so I'm not sure if it's stable enough. It may also not be there if the construction I saw on the Google map continued. And of course, it's close to her house and an elementary school. So lots of potential for it to go badly, even with friends. If I ever go back, I will take pictures and update everything. As for contacting her, her friends, her family to learn more, while I understand the desire for answers, I simply won't do that. Everyone's moved on, and hopefully happy and better off now. So no need to start potential trouble. I for sure wish I had a complete explanation. But for now, we just have to guess and theorize, I suppose. We've got some pretty solid answers, and some pretty wild ideas.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.